All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we are embarking on a seriously chilling journey. We're breaking down the terrifying anatomy of 6 distinct supernatural manifestations. And look, we aren't just here to recount spooky ghost stories around a campfire, we're figuring out exactly what makes them tick. By exploring these incredibly dark cases, ranging from haunted, desolate highways to cursed, remote islands, we are going to uncover the precise mechanics behind the vengeful spirit trope. So you might want to keep the lights on for this one, and let's dive right in.
So, what actually binds a soul to the world of the living? It's the absolute core mystery we're unraveling today. We are transitioning away from those cheap, visceral jump scares and plunging straight into the dark psychological depths of a real haunting. Why do some spirits peacefully move on, while others just stay behind to inflict unimaginable horror? Well, the answer almost always lies in unresolved trauma and absolute utter despair.
Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, Anatomy of a Haunting.
So, to get our bearings, a vengeful spirit isn't just your run-of-the-mill, floating white sheet ghost. It's an entity trapped in the mortal realm by profound tragedy, a brutal betrayal, or a completely unnatural death. And their sole purpose? Relentless retribution. This is the vital thread connecting every single one of our 6 cases today. They aren't haunting a place just for fun or to pull pranks. They are actively demanding a twisted, horrifying form of justice.
Moving right along to Section 2, the cursed locations. Notice how incredibly mundane our 6 cursed spaces seem at first glance? We've got Bhutia Flat number 18, which is literally just a regular company apartment. There's room 123 at the Circus Hotel, the lonely, quiet stretch of Highway 44, a seemingly holy place like the Sacred Heart Church, a dusty third-floor college library, and finally, a remote mystery island. You know, these totally everyday locations become inescapable traps precisely because of the blood that was spilled on their grounds.
Which brings us to the red flags. Section 3, Omens and Warning Signs.
I want to ask you a very direct question. How do you know you aren't alone right now? Really think about it. When the temperature suddenly drops in your room, or you hear a random floorboard creak down the hall, your brain immediately scrambles for a logical reason, right? It's just the wind, or the house settling. Well, this psychological denial is actually the spirit's greatest advantage. And as we're going to see, the line between comfortable logic and absolute terror is incredibly thin.
The crucial point here is that stark contrast between what victims desperately want to believe and the horrifying reality creeping up on them. On one side, you have the rational explanations, drafts, bad nightmares, or, as the husband Ronak in Flat 18 confidently insisted to his pregnant wife, just travel fatigue. But on the other side, the paranormal reality. In the third-floor library, investigators recorded massive EMF meter spikes and severe unnatural temperature drops. In Flat 18, the reality was a black cat transforming into a wailing entity, crying so loudly that it caused the maid's ears, nose, and mouth to fatally bleed out. So, yeah, denial can literally be deadly.
And sometimes, the omen is something deeply innocent that's been twisted into something sinister. Just imagine waking up in the dead of night to a disembodied lullaby echoing in the dark. Chanda hai tu, mera suraj hai tu. You are the moon, you are my sun. This was the terrifying reality for Juhi in Flat 18. This beautiful, classic lullaby became a horrifying omen because it directly targeted her pregnancy, signaling that the entity didn't just want to scare her, it wanted to claim her unborn child as its own.
Let's dig into the why behind all this. Section 4, the tragic origins.
Let's walk through this absolutely devastating timeline from the Sacred Heart Church case. This perfectly illustrates how human sin literally paves the way for demonic possession. It all starts with Father Neil breaking his vows and having a secret affair with a young woman named Maria. This, of course, leads to a hidden pregnancy. To protect his pristine reputation, Father Neil and Mother Agnes forced Maria into premature induced labor during a massive storm. They tell her the baby died, but the horrific truth? They bury the infant alive in the cemetery. This ultimate unthinkable betrayal completely shattered Maria, throwing the door wide open for demonic entities and the vengeful spirit of her own dead child to possess her.
The thing is, spirits often use their tragic pasts as a literal weapon. Take the entity haunting Highway 44. She asks, "If I were a ghost, would I be speaking to you so politely? I just want to go home." The truck driver, Kamlesh, is completely lured in by her sorrow. She spins this heartbreaking tale of being brutally beaten and abandoned by her husband just because she couldn't bear children. She plays on his empathy, creating a total false sense of security before unleashing absolute chaotic terror on the open road.
And this brilliantly illustrates our main point here. If we look across our cases, the entity in Flat 18 was a surrogate mother who was burned alive. In room 123 at Circus Circus, a mother and her young son were ruthlessly shot to death. Down in the college library, the librarian was murdered by a professor, and her death was completely staged to look like a suicide. What's the common denominator? Extreme, unresolved injustice. That right there is the true fuel for a haunting.
Which takes us to the explosive climax of these hauntings. Section 5. The Wrath of Spirits.
So how do you fight back? Let's see how this builds into the cleansing process. Across our sources, whether it's Father Edmund dealing with that demonic nun, or the Tantric Babe dealing with the vengeable library ghost, the steps to neutralize the supernatural threat are remarkably similar. First, you have to establish a barrier, usually drawing salt circles and lighting candles. Second, bring out the spiritual weapons, like holy water or Sanskrit mantras. Third, and this is absolutely crucial, they must provoke the spirit to reveal the hidden truth of its death. Only after the truth is out can they perform the final rites to actually release the soul.
But what happens if the truth is too dark, or the sinners absolutely refuse to repent? Well, the consequence of failure is total destruction. During the exorcism at the Sacred Heart Church, the possessed Maria literally lifts Father Neil and Mother Agnes up into the air. Through sheer supernatural force, unquenchable flames burst right onto their clothing, burning them to death while they hover midair. It was the ultimate, inescapable consequence for the brutal, horrific sins they tried so hard to bury.
And this wrath isn't always just physical. Sometimes it bends reality itself. 100. That is how many kilometers per hour Kamlesh drove his truck down Highway 44, desperately trying to escape the spirit. He mashed the accelerator to 80, 90, 100 kilometers per hour. Yet impossibly, no matter how fast he went, the ruined sign for Sati Gati just kept appearing in his headlights over and over and over again. The spirit had trapped him in a terrifying spatial loop, a nightmare where his speed meant absolutely nothing.
Let's pivot to some practical takeaways. Section 6. How to survive.
These survival tactics are practically written in the blood of those who made fatal mistakes. Rule number 1, never, ever open your hotel door after midnight. A traveler did exactly this on the 6th floor and came face to face with the faceless spirit of a man who had burned himself alive. Number 2, if you are fleeing down a haunted highway, do not look back, even if a voice calls your exact name. And finally, if you happen to find an iron coffin buried deep on a mystery island and it's heavily sealed with ancient Sanskrit warnings, please do not dig it up. Which brings us to arguably the most chilling account of survival in all our sources. The Mystery Island held a powerful witch who was being punished by an ancient king. Her chilling declaration right before her death was simple. "How will you kill me? At the time of my death, whoever my gaze falls upon will be cursed." So the king buried her alive in an iron coffin, but he used a blindfold so her dying gaze couldn't curse the land. But as human nature goes, centuries later, greedy treasure hunters dug her up, removed the blindfold, and unleashed her wrath. Once freed, the spirit of the witch began systematically possessing the survivors, desperately looking for a way off that island. The ship's captain quickly realized the terrifying truth. The spirit travels strictly through the gaze. If he looked out at the incoming rescue ships, he would carry the curse straight to the mainland. So, to stop the witch's curse from escaping the island through his own eyes, the captain took a sharp knife and completely blinded himself. An ultimate, horrifying sacrifice, strictly calculated just for survival. Which leaves us with this lingering thought. We've mapped out the tragic origins, the subtle omens, and the explosive wrath of these spirits. We even know the survival rules. So, the next time you're just sitting there reading a book and you feel a sudden, inexplicable chill in an empty room, are you absolutely sure you are alone? Or did you just ignore the very first omen? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay safe out there and keep learning.